Hey friends, Josh again. This is part 2 of my conversation with Brad George. Brad's a court announcer, broadcaster, obsessive sports fan, and local to the Riverina and Upper Murray region. So if you didn't catch the first part of my interview with Brad, it's the episode right before this one. In that episode, we covered everything up until Brad's first professional broadcasting job, where he relocated to Wagga and Griffith and floated between those two locations until finding himself a full-time position in Griffith, New South Wales. In today's episode, we go on to discuss Griffith as a town, as an area, what goes on there, his experience in broadcasting in that region, and we also talk about NITV, which is truly fascinating, and I've gone and checked out since this interview, and it's one of the few things about AFL-style football that's actually held my attention in, I reckon, the better part of a decade. It's really good stuff, and Brad shares exactly what that is, so that's awesome. We also talk a little bit of Bandits, because how can we not with the court announcer of the Bandits? Okay, this is some good stuff, and let's do this thing. Let's just talk a little bit about Griffith, because just before we go into the studio, let's start with outside of the studio. That this will now be probably the most northerly town we've spoken about on the podcast, and I can't imagine we're going to go much more north than that.
Nah.
What were your impressions of the town? Because I guess when you're doing regional radio, the expectation is that part of what you're going to do when you get there is ingratiate yourself into the community really quickly.
That's what I was taught.
I've spent some time in Griffith playing gigs, and some of the most friendly and unfriendly people I think I've ever met in my life were the people I met playing gigs in that town. And that's no reflection on what the town's like now. This is 10 years ago or more, and for you it's probably longer.
Yep.
How did you find Griffith when you obviously just moved?
When I first got there, I fell in love with the place. It was an awesome place to be. There was community spirit. The birds are singing, sky's blue. I landed my first real gig in radio, and it was all mine to do with, it's like a shiny new car. I can drive this however I want. And to my detriment, in the end, that's where I lost the passion for it. Towards the end of being in Griffith was I could drive the car however I want, but nobody taught me how to drive it properly. We can all get in and jump in a car and go, but to refine that art, I was left to my own devices.
That's kind of where okay, so
yeah,
because I've always thought it's just the vibe of the town. There's places that don't have a vibe, but Griffith's one of the places where as soon as I got out of the car,
you knew you were in Griffith, didn't you?
Well, I knew that I was somewhere that I hadn't experienced quite that kind of night scene and that kind of vibe on the street. And it was neither good nor bad. I can't describe it to you.
Would you agree they're a different kettle of fish in Griffith?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
from us here in Albury, yeah.
When I say unfriendly people, it's probably a little bit unkind. It was probably just there was some intimidating personalities and there was a lot of really loud personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, and to counteract that, there were some of the funniest people I ever met playing gigs.
Definitely. Beautiful people over there.
So it's just a melting pot of people you don't more characters than you expect to find. There's a bigger range of types of people than I expected there to be.
Like I said, I fell in love with the place and it had a great vibe to it. Like you said, the word vibe is just spot on because there was so much happening. I got involved with local sport, but when I say I got involved with local sport, it was really clicky. It took me about 4 years before I broke the ice and finally got involved with the Griffith Swans and local basketball over there, calling the games on the mic and firing up the crowds as I do here with the Bandits. And it took me ages, 4 years. I'm telling you, 4 years easy before, you're the bloke from the radio. And
do you think that I've heard other people in bands and people that are in bigger radio stations now that have done time in Griffith? Do you think it's because a lot of people treat Griffith not like it's a worthwhile venture in and of itself? It's just a stop on the journey to somewhere else? So maybe it's hard to get embraced by the local community when they know they know your goal is to piss off somewhere else.
Yeah, that was one of and like I said, Liam was only there 90 odd days, but I tended to make it a home and make friends because of just my outgoing personality. I'll talk to anyone. But Griffith, it's you're somewhere there. When you arrive, it's just a different place, and they're very insular people over there. And insular, they love their family life, which isn't a bad thing. Shops will shut as soon as they can to get home to family. Once again, not a bad thing. But if you're a single bloke or someone visiting the town, you go, well, where's everyone gone at midday on a Saturday? Everyone's gone to do their family thing or play sport. Sport's a big thing over there. And to a point, they are fairly cliquey in Griffith until they get to know you and trust you. Yeah. You're sort of on your lonesome.
Just when it comes to the content creation side, even though I've heard people talk about Griffith like it's this tiny little town, it's not. No. I mean, it would be, close to 30,000 people?
30,000 people, and then you've got the surrounding villages, like I said, Leeton, Lake Cajeligo, Darlington Point, Collyamberley.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on, Narandra.
I don't know how many people you can name off the top of your head, but none of us can name 30,000 people, so I don't really get that whole argument that it's a little town, but I guess certain things about it maybe just felt small. Where if the town kind of was closing down early, and if you weren't big into going out, there's a certain vibe. Like when I say vibe, I'm saying more so about the nightlife, because that was what I was exposed to.
With, yep.
And that could be pretty intimidating because it was a no holds barred kind of drink fest. I remember when we were there at the other place, they were having this whole nightclub filled with bubbles. It was called the White Party or something.
That would have been the Gemini across the road, yeah.
And we're thinking, okay, that stuff doesn't happen in Albury because they were just ready to party. But for you, I don't know whether you were or weren't going out all the time, but if stuff's closing down and they're very cliquey and the sports teams are hard to get involved with, etc., how are you generating daily content for a radio show when maybe it wasn't like it was Melbourne where, okay, well, I can't get in with this, but there's 30,000 other things happening I can talk about?
I dig into myself. For ages there, I couldn't say nono and nono. I just couldn't get it out. And I had a little Italian mate who'd come in and answer the phones before school. He was keen to get into radio, and we called him Gracie after Martin Malloy, the whole Gracie thing. And because he was our producer, he'd knock stuff up for it. Oh, mate, I need you to go and record this off the net, or whatever he could do, he'd do it for us. He was very keen to get into radio. But unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in the end. He went up the Snow FM, Jindabyne, and it just didn't pan out. Get this, he's driving trucks.
Okay.
And we'd used to have fun on air. We'd take the piss out of him. He'd take the piss out of me. Then we'd record some stuff. I ran naked along Wagga Street. And that
what a street name to do it, mate.
Wagga Street. I used to love saying Wagga Street on the radio. Wagga Street. Yeah. You'd get it out. But and the whole run naked thing was, I ran a dog called Naked, wearing a T-shirt. Hi, I'm naked. Up Wagga Street. And I said, Friday night, I'm going to run naked up Wagga Street if Collingwood get done or whatever the premise was.
Yep.
And I ran naked up Wagga Street. Naked was the name of the dog, and we ran up Wagga Street.
So was Griffith a big football town, or did you have to change some of your references to talk NRL?
No, Griffith is great like that. They've got a great
multi-sport powerhouse.
I mentioned I've worked in footy stores and things like that. Footy Focus offered me some seasonal work up there, and they sell a heap of NRL and AFL gear. It's, I wouldn't say 50-50, maybe 60-40 in favour of NRL.
Yeah.
But they've got a strong Riverina Football League team up there, and their rugby league. You know what's huge in Griffith, and not so much here? They really revere the game of touch football.
Yeah, right. Okay.
They've got a playing arena there where sometimes I think they've got 10 to maybe 15 games going at once.
Wow.
On a Wednesday night at Kalina Oval.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful playing surface they've got there. It was the old tip, I'm led to believe, where it goes down in tiers, so from top to bottom, and kids play it, families play it. And I'd never seen it. They wear their old touch footy shirts, like all badges of honour.
Yeah, right.
And they
Can't
love
say
their
I've ever
touch
heard of
footy.
that.
No, touch footy is massive in Griffith.
Is that because you don't want to fall over and cut yourself on the old tip grass?
No, like I'm saying, it's a beautiful playing surface. It was once a tip.
Okay.
But to look at it, it's an oasis of green. They keep it beautifully manicured. And I actually
Did you have a go? Did you get involved with that?
No, I had a go at trying to put some Aussie rules goalposts in there because I could see green grass. I go, why haven't we at least got a set of goalposts? And that was one funny thing. One of the things I pushed on the radio, why hasn't Griffith got any Aussie rules goalposts outside Exy's Oval?
Yeah.
And I even had Collingwood captain Nick Maxwell sign a letter for me that I put on the Facebook page. And, yeah, Griffith needs a set of goalposts where you can just go down and have a kick. And I had my eyes on Kalina Oval. I wanted some goal, but still to this day, there's none there.
Oh, it's a big touch footy town, mate.
Unsuccessful,
You've got to remember that.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about, you just brought up Nick Maxwell. I know that you mentioned that you did get to meet, I guess because you're solo hosting the show, I guess you had to drive a lot of that content yourself. Let's talk about some of the celebrities that you got to speak to, if there's any funny stories in there, obviously.
I got some rippers, yeah.
And how were those coming to you when you were in Griffith? Were you personally reaching out to organise all that? Was that coming from the group?
It was driven more so from myself. But every now and again, not every now and again, every day you'd open up your email and you'd have press releases from all the record companies. And generally the big celebrities never took the opportunity to talk to us in the bush. They'd leave it for one of the bigger ones and we'd replay, or someone would record something and get thrown down the line to you. Yep. Here's a bone, play it, it's us. And I didn't like that. I liked ringing the number and asking for the opportunity. And generally 7 times out of 10 you get knocked on the head, but those 3 times they'd go, oh, yeah, we can organise something for you.
Yeah.
Celebrities, I don't want to sound like a name dropper, but...
Well, I asked the question, so go ahead.
Over the years, there was the Wiggles, got to hang out with the Wiggles. That was heaps of fun, had an afternoon with them.
Can we just, before we talk, just so people have some context, what type of music were you playing during your shift?
Yeah, it was just contemporary, hot, alternative.
So was this like for the local, like maybe the Albury Wodonga contingent, because that's most of the people who listen at the moment? Was it more like Triple M back in the day or more like B104.9?
Good question. I'm trying to think how to... Well, let's just say at the time,
in between
the big
those two?
hits, I'll roll through some of the big hits I was spinning on air or throwing out there. Early part was, and I like finding them on CD singles at markets at Trash or Treasure, and I go, yeah, I'll buy that because that's what I first started on commercial radio with. The New Radicals, Get What You Give.
Yeah.
Tal Bachman, She's So High. I'm just trying to think of some of the others that were massive at the time. Oh, Smash Mouth. And I was lucky enough to see Smash Mouth only a couple of months ago here in Albury with all their hits, All Star, Can't Get Enough of You Baby.
Yep.
All those sort of...
So that kind of era.
Contemporary sort of... Yeah, they were awesome songs. And when Shrek exploded, we're talking turn of the millennium, 2000, then... AC/DC every now and again. And I remember Spiderbait. Here's something for you. Spiderbait. They were number 1 in the country with Black Betty.
Yeah.
And they were sizzling the charts with that. Can you believe I was not allowed to play Black Betty in breakfast? Too loud, too raucous. You're not allowed to play it.
The number 1 song in the country.
Number 1 song in the country. And they were in Griffith.
They were in the town.
They were in the town on a weekend.
Wow.
Wasn't allowed to play the song in full. I could play little grabs. No, you're not to play it during breakfast. Too loud, too raucous.
Right.
And that staggered me.
Okay. Well, we don't want to relitigate the music taste of radio because it's a bit off the mark quite often. But let me just think about that time frame of the biggest bands in the world.
Oasis?
Were you allowed to play any Linkin Park songs in breakfast?
Numb, I think, got a run, an encore.
Possibly.
I think, But they were left more to those late night shows.
We're talking about, at least with Hybrid Theory, the biggest debut album of all time now. I think it might even be bigger than Appetite for Destruction. That's how big that album was. Couldn't play them.
No, too loud, too raw.
What about Nickelback when that came out?
Nickelback, I love Nickelback.
Yeah, because there's nothing offensive in that song. Yeah.
How you remind me, and a funny story, Dad was, you're playing a good song on the radio, because we'd have the same playlist of what was going on in Albury. Oh, you're playing a good song. I was saying, Dad, what is it? I said, Dad, next time you hear the song, write down what time you heard it.
He didn't do the voice for you?
No, he just couldn't get the Chad Kroger. But he loved How You Remind Me. Oh, great song, love it. But he couldn't tell me what it was called, how the song went. And I said, right, Dad, write down when you heard it, and then I can go back on the logger, listen to it, and I'll try and work it out from there. Or I can look at the log, pull up the log. And it ended up being How You Remind Me by Nickelback. Yeah. Dad at 60, mid-60, loving Nickelback.
Yeah, because I remember quite often at the time, I would turn the radio on for the talk breaks and then turn it off. Because I was at uni around that time, and I'd turn it off for all the music or down because it was just no good. But so we've covered off on the music. It's probably, for people that are listening now and they're thinking that modern style of commercial radio, which has been up until recently very pure pop driven.
Yeah, and I don't like it for that reason.
You would probably had a more expansive tonal palette to play with. There was obviously a certain point that Black Betty or Louder or Heavier just was off the table for what you were doing.
Yeah.
So now that we've covered off on that, let's just go for a small name drop, shall we?
All right. Yeah, let's go for a wander in the garden of names.
Yeah.
I've struck up a really good friendship with Shannon Knoll, and it really irks me nowadays when you hear these breakfast announcers. Now Shannon's been in the game for nearly 15 years, I think, all told, hasn't he? Oh, g'day, Knowlesy. How are you, mate? Cobber, Digger, Brown Eye. Oh, good to have you on the radio. You're doing so well for yourself. Hang on a tick. When was the last time you guys played a Shannon Knoll track?
Yeah, it'd be 10 years, I reckon.
Nah, not even that.
Yeah.
And they're all matey and schmaltzy with him, and I hear it all the time in interviews. But then I look at the network, whether it be Hit or whatever Southern Cross or Stereo are now, Triple M, even Triple M. He's got a good earthy sound to him, Aussie rock sound. Guys, when was the last time you played any of his music?
Yeah.
Never. He's never logged. He was for a little bit logged when he was on Australian Idol, really, kicking goals there. But funnily enough, Griffith never got Channel 10 while he was in Australian Idol. So, yeah.
So you were bringing some guy on promising. This is the second most famous person on television besides the guy that beat him. And they're all like, well, we don't care, mate.
But the thing was, we went wider than Griffith, and this is where I've worked that relationship with Shannon, is I used to slip his songs in because I knew he was Aussie. I knew he was working hard. He was a local. And I'd go not against the grain, but I'd just slip them in wherever I could. Shine, Drive, What About Me, Lift, all those sort of songs. But little did I know, and I'm getting Twitter messages from his brother Damien, who was on the tractor. Oh, good on you playing old mates' songs and things like that. So that's how I struck that relationship up. Long story short, Adam Thompson, Chocolate Starfish. He's become a great mate, even to the point where he helped me out with the Red Hot Summer Tour ticket when they were here only a couple of weeks ago. And he was fantastic. My boss come in and he goes, I don't know whether you've heard of this gentleman. He's passing through town and he's helping out the local school here. And what he does is a music program where he helps the kids learn how to write music and then eventually record it and then bring it into the radio side of things. I don't know whether you've heard of him. And he said, he's just a bloke you may have heard of. Adam Thompson. I go, the bloke from Chocolate Starfish? Really? Seriously? He goes, yeah, he's coming in the studio. Have you heard of him? And I said, bloody oath, I used to go to the Termo and I was front row centre when Chocolate Starfish were rocking it in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And struck up a great relationship with Adam, and he's never forgotten it, that I played whatever he brought into the studio. I was happy to play it, and Chocolate Starfish, I love them to death. I'm always front row centre whenever they're playing here in Albury or nearby, and if I can get to a gig, and Adam's been a good friend like that. One of those 3 out of the 10 that I was telling you about that got back to me and said, yeah, I'll it was more like, yeah, man, I'm happy to record an interview with you, was Steve-O from Jackass.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you just made the call, you sent the email off, and I thought, let's see if I can get him.
Yeah.
Threw it out there and spent about 7 or 10 minutes talking to Steve-O from Jackass and on the phone naturally because he was in Sydney. And I made the mistake of asking him, so you're in Australia, naturally you got your Wild Boys and your Jackass stuff that you're doing professionally. I asked the question, what do you do when you're in Australia and you're not, luckily I was recording this interview, when you're not being Steve-O, Jackass or Wild Boys? Oh, man, we're just sitting around smoking weed and masturbating. And luckily, like I said, I recorded that interview.
That was a pre-record, yeah.
Knowing what I might encounter, and luckily that one never got to air, but it's on this podcast for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Peter Brock, the Wiggles. I'm trying to think who else has been through town in Griffith.
So that would have been I'm just going off what I know about the modern versions of those stations that have probably splintered more into really defined markets. Was it at a female-oriented station at that point, or was it a more broad all-audiences station because it was one of the few commercials in that area?
The bosses used to like to say that Star FM is a single girl, if you were a person, is a single girl, 25 to 28 years old, spends money on going out, likes to be trendy, in the click. It was one of those stations where Triple M is your bloke's got the ute, you got the keys, you're going to go out, he's going to listen to the footy, he's going to have a beer, or 2RG back in the day was, but it was predominantly 2RG when I first got there was a farming station. Like we used to record on reel to reel. I asked you, Josh, do you know how to load a Revox?
No.
A reel-to-reel?
I'm aware of the technology, but I have no idea how to do that.
It's not technology.
Okay.
It's untechnology.
Whatever the opposite of that is.
We used to record farming reports on target in agriculture, everything on reel-to-reel, and had to play during lunch. And Mr. Gamble, and I call him Mr. Gamble because John Laws called him Mr. Gamble on air one day. And I said, better call him Mr. Gamble. Used to go in the toilet after him. You'd find he'd wiped his butt with $50 notes. This man was very rich, for a wealthy man, owned radio stations. And to me, he was just an older gentleman over the hallway. And he never really said a lot to me until I switched over to 2RG later in the game. And he said, look, I know you've come from FM, old mate, but do you think you give the time and temperature a little bit more?
Yeah, okay.
And make sure the finance report goes in every lunchtime. Because I could see at my 2RG studio, I could see straight across into his office. And he was. And so with what he said, and obviously he's Mr. Gamble, I wrote a bit bigger than a couple of Post-it notes in big black and red letters, time and temperature, so I never, ever forgot. Yeah. So I improved that for him.
So when did you move to doing that? How far through your run up there was that?
8 years after being on Star FM solo, without any help at all, without any real air checking.
When you say air checking, for people that are listening, that's basically having your superiors tell you what's working and what's not.
Exactly. Without any guidance, it was all left to my own devices. Like I said earlier, I was
How do you find the energy to keep doing that?
It is. It's tough. Because
I would have thought, for the lack of a better term, you're meant to be able to trust that feedback you're getting from an air check. And after that amount of time, any feedback you just have to use as energy, whether it's positive or negative.
Exactly. And generally people come up to me.
Were you ready for a change? Were you looking for a change?
Not really. I was sort of settled in where I was, but you ask where does the energy come from? It comes from people coming up to you in the street, and I'm off air, my brain's clicked out of gear, because when you're on air, you consistently think, what's next? Got to keep everything to time and everything. And it is a mentally taxing thing to do a breakfast show. A lot of people don't realise till they actually get in there and go, oh, mate, you're waiting on clients to call, or you're waiting for this to happen or that to happen, or you've got to be, as I said, Chucky told me, Jamie Chalks, be 5 steps ahead of the plate. And you go home, and when I was married, I'd say to Beck, my wife at the time, I'd say, look, I'm just not in the mood to talk. I'd get home, I've been talking all day, and I've been chasing people or recording stuff or whatever, because I used to record ads for TV, voiceovers, because they had some sort of weird relationship with television. I was told, leave it at that, don't ask questions.
Just do it.
I'd do 10 of those, brekkie shift in the morning, then I'd record other stuff for interviews like the Steve-O interview, and I'd get home about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have a bit of a kip and Yeah, you relied on your love of the game. It was Michael Jordan has a fascination with basketball.
Yeah.
And I had a similar fascination with the love of radio. So you get up and you do it, and people will pull you up in the street the next day. Oh, what you said about such and such was funny, or you took the piss out of Starry or Gracie or whoever. And I'd totally forgotten it. Like I said, my brain's clicked out of gear, and it might have been only a couple of hours ago.
Yeah.
But all I'm looking for is a feed and a cold drink, just sort of soothe the voice and move forward for the day. So
let's maybe bring all those lessons from that decade or more of just intense learning.
Yep.
Let's bring that forward to now, where besides the day job, what you're doing away from that, you're calling football, which I think that's really intriguing how you're doing that. And also for the last 4 now going into your 5th season, I'm pretty sure that's right. You've been the Bandits live game announcer.
Yeah.
And firing that room up, which when it cools down a little bit by about the start of June can sometimes be a pretty cold affair.
That's right.
I mean, I know because I spent 6 years volunteering and I think 3.5 years.
That's where we first met.
On the board of the club. And I just had to take a year off this year. I was exhausted and I didn't get to watch much of the basketball.
That's right.
So if nothing else, I've always been, besides the pressure that's on you is exponentially more than most of the people there that are quote-unquote volunteering, but you get to watch the game.
I got the best seat in the house.
So you said that before. Tell me about what it's like when Seaball, now NBL 1 basketball, is at its best. You talked about a great moment earlier, which wasn't particularly fantastic for you personally at that second, but Darcy Harding hits a shot to beat our hated rival, Geelong.
Yep.
Although you wouldn't meet a better bunch of people if you actually off-court than the guys from Geelong. They're actually a really good club to get on
I've
with.
struck up a great working relationship with Wes Cusworth from Geelong, the court announcer there.
I think that they have the same little bit of rebel in them that we do as a club.
Exactly.
He hits a 3 on the buzzer and the place just hits a level that most, if not no other local sport hits. So what are those moments like for you? How do you not get lost in being a fan of the players in the club and these great moments and still hold your nerve when you're making the calls?
Listen closely. Sometimes I do. And I lose track of what words I'm saying. I've got this mentality, and it's a little trick. It's like look, see, talk.
Yeah.
I look, I see, I talk. So let's just say this room. There's a computer monitor there, a couple of switches over there. There's a laptop bag. Then you've got a couple of photos scattered around. So what I did there, I went from there to there and told you in commentary form what I look, see, talk. I didn't stop to think.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the craziest things come out. Deborah George, I don't know whether you remember the time he got up and the errant alley-oop pass, it just went, and I've got the photo on my fridge because I don't have kids. So the next best thing I've got
Deborah
is
on
my
your
Bandits. Yeah. And last name George, he's a brother.
Yeah,
let's face it.
Yeah.
And Deborah's gotten up. Do you remember this? It was the photo in one of the programs where he's up like this and he's guaranteed 3 foot above the rim. Those rims are 10 feet high.
Yeah, he is.
And his hand would have been 3 foot above the hoop, and then somehow he slammed it home.
Yeah.
And just out of my mouth, look, see, talk like I just did a couple of seconds ago. Deborah George with flubber in his shoes, because that's what it looked like. It looked like he had flubber in his shoes, so I haven't even thought about that line.
Yeah.
From out of nowhere, you know, and generally I don't know whether the crowd's listening to me at the time. Some people have come back and said, oh, that was funny or whatever you come up with, because it's a live situation.
And you've got to, I think a lot of people, when you're doing that kind of job, they want to hear something
creative,
fresh and new every single time you open your mouth, and you've got to think, well, there's a chance with sponsors in the house, with obligations, with the going out on the lives.
Exactly.
It's been live streamed to the NBL actual official page now.
And that sort of relaxes my job to a point now because they've got a commentator, Steve Murphy.
You don't have to do any play-by-play.
No, I used to have to do that because Brad, the camera operator, he'd only go left and right and occasionally up the scoreboard. So I would always say on the mic, because I knew the audio would eventually be picked up by the microphone on the camera, to go on the live stream, Bandits by 5. Bandits down by 6 or whatever the case might be. Yeah. So I knew, and I was sort of feeding those lines, turnover, because sometimes when those amateur cameras, it's nothing against Brad or the setup they had.
Well, half the time I probably was doing it.
That's the other thing.
I wasn't real good at it either. And Brad was far better than me. It was probably me when you're thinking about the real.
Exactly. You just look, see, talk, and that's what I find with sports commentary is look, see, talk, and make the most of what you see, translate it and try and get the emotion, the colour of what's happening, a theatre of the mind for somebody who can't see what's going on, especially on radio, theatre of the mind, set it up, sell the sizzle, not a sausage.
Yeah.
You want to be able to taste that sausage and you don't want to be told, oh, it's a pink, wet bag of meat, which is essentially what it is. But you go, oh, delicious. This one is melting in the mouth. It's got the hint of a spice and pepper and just with a bit of tomato sauce. You want to go down to Bunnings now, don't you?
I do, actually. I always want to go there.
Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. Yeah, definitely. And that's what it's all about. And out for you.
That's a good way to finish up the Bandits talk. So, just with NITV,
yep,
this is really fascinating. Can you just describe what it is, where people can find it, and what your involvement is, and we'll finish up with that.
Yeah, good question. Look, Josh, it's a channel that a lot of people aren't aware of. Don't ask me why, a lot of televisions, when you're scanning through the channels going, through Prime and all the big networks, for whatever reason, it'll skip over channel 34. You literally have to hit 3-4 on your remote to find it. It'll go through those SBS radio channels and everything like that, but then it'll jump from those radio channels up to, I think, Prime Television without even seeing channel 34 there or the Indigenous channels. And it's the National Indigenous Broadcaster, and Rumballara Footy Club in Shepparton signed a deal with them to broadcast their games of a weekend and straight after the Marngrook Footy Show, which now that the demise of the AFL Channel 9 Footy Show has gone down the gurgler and the front bar's slaughtering them in ratings and things like that, the Marngrook Footy Show for football rather than comedy or light entertainment, the Marngrook Footy Show for footy coverage has really jumped up there as the best footy show in Australia at the moment because they talk footy. They're not about tricking footballers into thinking Shane Crawford's dressed up as an old man.
Yeah.
They're about talking about why Collingwood didn't win against West Coast the week before and they've got to play the Western Bulldogs this week, why and where and how they're going to win that game. So they're right across the footy. They've got, I think, a fair bit of coverage on the Marngrook Footy Show. So that's the Indigenous Aboriginal channel. And if you were to flick it on now, there'd be programs about their culture, their music, and NITV is just a great outlet for anyone to tune in. Anyone. They have Maori programs as well.
Okay.
They take from New Zealand. And I quite often, sometimes I have really good movies like that.
It sounds really fascinating. And
yeah.
I think, I hope this doesn't come across as a massive cop-out, but I think the simple fact that, like, I work in my role in my day job where part of my role is to oversee the functioning of probably close to 100 televisions is just one little part of my job. And I don't think I've ever rescanned and had that channel come up.
Exactly.
Which is just not really acceptable, really. And I'm not sure, maybe they're just not paying enough to have strong enough signal, but I'm assuming you can.
No, the signal's there. You'll get a clear signal. It's just for whatever. I think it's in the manufacture of the televisions.
Yeah, they're just not aware of the station, clearly.
It's just, not picking up or in their channel count or whatever it does. I don't know. I'm not a tech head like that.
You'd think an auto, but I'll definitely go around and fix a few of them up now that I know that it's available everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll tell people, I'm on NIT. Oh, yeah, where's that? I said, it's on TV, Channel 34. And they'll throw me in my games. It's called Heartland Footy because they'll play us out of Rumballara Shepparton, and then they might play a game from Northern Territory or they were playing a lot of Canberra Demons games in the NEFL, the North Eastern Australian Football League. Who else got a run? The GWS Giants NEFL team got a run. And they're scattered. And the thing is, and it really ticks me off in one way is I'll be in Shepparton, Central Victoria, middle of winter, freezing cold. I've got the jacket on, I've got the mittens on, I've got the gloves, and I'm holding a microphone trying to call the footy in the freezing cold and the sleet and rain. And the game straight after mine, if I catch it on TV, is one from the beautiful tropics up north in the Northern Territory. They're playing games in bare feet. And the sun's shining and a dog runs out onto the ground. It's just great footy.
Yeah, okay.
It's
That sounds
awesome.
awesome.
And NITV have given me an opportunity through Wes Custworth, who was on Win Sport here.
Wes, just to remind people, if you didn't catch it, I know we've named a lot of people. That's the court announcer for the Geelong Basketball Club.
Supercats. We struck up a relationship. He could see I was very attentive to, once again, my attention to detail and attentive with the Bandits. And he'd obviously heard me on Oak FM when I was there for a short time. And he obviously knew I had the click, I could do it. And he threw the bone. And initially, last year, we only did Rumballara home games and every final they were involved with. Rumballara last year were a team that were pretty much like Collingwood. They weren't supposed to get as far as what they did. They got to a prelim final last year against Nathalia. Nathalia, the Purples. And Nathalia are the September specialists when it comes to Aussie rules footy in the Murray League. They've won the last 4 premierships, going for 5 this year. And Rumballara had them on the ropes up till half time. And I'm saying into the microphone, there's no way Nathalia can come back from this. They're the September specialists. The Purples have got no chance here. Rumballara booked their place. Start the bus. We're going to be in the grand final for Rumballara. And then that's where it stopped. Half time.
Oh, that's no good.
Rumballara overrun in the second half. Nathalia hadn't kicked a score. I think they may have got just a point or behind right up to half time. Then after half time, someone spiked their Gatorade and they come out all guns blazing and straight into the grand final.
Wow.
And they cleaned up Baruga in last year's grand final, shut down an ex-AFL VFL star in Cameron Cloak. They made him frustrated. He didn't want to be there.
And were you calling that game?
Oh, yeah, I got to call the grand final. Yeah, definitely. Call me back for the grand final.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, so essentially, and they only just replayed that grand final a couple of weeks ago on NITV. So those games will pop up late at night and Saturday afternoon and Sundays. But a lot of footy fans would be at their own footy or at the AFL. So it sort of competes with that sort of thing. But NITV, I love doing it. I take a lot of pride in it. I had the local Shepparton News footy guide posted over to me just so I had an idea, a crux of who's doing what, who's where. And that publication leaves anything I've ever seen for dead. It was awesome. At Murray League, the Pecola League, all the other little surrounding leagues. And they had all the draws and all the stats, everything I needed to know. And I sat there Saturday morning and soaked it all in, jumped in the car, took off over to see Rumballara get beaten by Kingupner at the weekend.
Sounds great.
There you go.
That's amazing, and I'll definitely make sure I give all that a plug in the notes for this episode.
Yeah.
So just to finish up, let's talk about buses for a sec. And let's wind this up with another Geelong Bandits versus story. Do you remember when we left Geelong, we were getting the biggest stink eye walking out of that stadium? There was only about 20 of us.
And I was doing the band.
Yeah, I don't think you made any friends that night.
Not in Geelong, and that's me being playful. That's who I
We got
am.
to the bus, people were flipping us off, saying, get out, just go, because they were all pretty devastated that we beat them in the last second.
Yep.
I say we like I was on the court. I felt like I was. I felt like I was in it.
But that's the emotion. That's what I spoke about earlier.
Yeah. Then our bus driver reversed into the side of their stadium.
Bang.
Do you remember? We just left.
Yep. Just bang. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, that was bloody fantastic. And there's people yelling at us and someone from the stadium
Colorbond wall. They had a big white Colorbond wall, and I'm sure it left a huge bang in the side of the building.
We left a dent in their hearts and a dent in their wall, mate.
Definitely. It was a great night. I had an awesome night that night, and it was a ripper. That's what I love. It's sport, it's friends, it's a bit of competitive nature. It's everything rolled into one. That's who I am.
So if anyone wants to reach out and maybe ask you more about what they've heard today, or just say hello or say, hey, we heard you on Punching Sideways, how can people reach out to you? Do you have a Twitter account?
Best way is Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
And I have got a Brad George Professional MC
I'll link that one up.
compare page.
Yeah.
And I haven't put anything on it for ages because I've been concentrating on my day job.
Yeah, which is important.
And learning, and then I get home, fall in a heap. I watch Married at First Sight and I'm out.
Yeah.
And then back to do it all again the next day. And, so just look up Brad George, Professional Court announcer, MC, compere. And I'm happy to answer any questions there. If anyone wants to know how to get into radio, maybe a program to use, I've got a great program for court announcing if you're interested in all that. Modern day radio, my thoughts on it. There's plenty of those still. And
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Excellent. Well, hopefully we can get you back and we can talk about some other
Haven't we
parts.
covered off on it already?
Yeah, just maybe we can talk about
That's
just
been
some.
great. We lost track of time. I think,
Yeah.
what have we been going? Nearly an hour and a half?
Yeah, I think we're over that now, so that's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the quicker hour and a halves I've ever done on the mic. So thank you, sir.
Not a problem. Happy to reach out for anyone. And yeah, I've got a story to tell, and so does everyone else. And it's good to have a listen to how people got to be where they are. That's why my bookshelf is full of autobiographies. Learn from the best and turn it into your own.
Righto, so punchingsideways.com for this episode, all the show notes for the episode and past guests. And if you were at all interested in the radio segments or portions of today's episode, go back 1 or 2 episodes, depending on when I put this out, and check out Paul Connick, who's a 56-year
Brilliant.
radio veteran.
That man, he's forgotten more than what we'll ever know.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a fantastic voice on the mic, but when he started speaking, I thought my head was going to get squashed.
Yeah.
And he's talking into it just a little handheld Sennheiser.
Gary Mack is the same. He's unbelievable. Look up Gary Mack on YouTube and have a look at his voice demo.
I'll try and find him, and I'll put some links for Gary Mack in there too.
Voice demos. This is Jarrah, Bunnings Jarrah. And because he's got the best of microphones and that red wine voice, it's just, sounds so good.
We might get on the red wine next time you're in, mate. Well, thank you, punchingsideways.com, and thank you for listening, and share it with a friend that you think might want to hear a podcast about the Riverina and the northern parts of Victoria. Righto, catch you later.